Okay, alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay, I have to take a piss. We're good. Wash hands? Oh, no, I did wash my hands. It was real quick, though. Like, super quick. So fast. Real quick. Okay.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So, I imagine you've got quite a few questions. I mean, what actually is the Shadowlands? How does it work? How is Sylvanas able to defeat the Lich King so handily? I mean, how did Saurfang do more damage to her? And you're probably also wondering, wow, isn't that some gorgeous B-roll of the new pins that are available
like some
on the
bullshit.
Master Tier of our Patreon this month? I know, smooth plug and a very good question indeed. And really, there's so much with this expansion to get into in terms of the lore that, yeah, we're going to do this video on it. We actually know quite a lot about the mechanics of the Shadowlands. We've got new characters, like the Jailer, who Sylvanas is in league with, and then the Arbiter, who is really one of the most mysterious. I mean, I say character, it's almost more
He's a Covenant elite. I already know who he is.
Now, there really is a lot for us to discuss here. So really, the Shadowlands are the realm of death, and overall, with all of the functions of the Shadowlands, it's, I mean, Ian actually said it really well when he said machine of death, and the character leading all this seems to be the Arbiter. Now, what is the Arbiter? Well, that's just something that I think we'll find out as time goes on. Well, now, the way things work...
I thought the Arbiter is the guy is like, whenever you die... You know, you go to, like, the gates of heaven, and who's it, like, St. Peter? Who the fuck is it that's at the gates of heaven? And he's like, all right, who you? And, it's the judge, right? It's the judge. And, yeah, St. Peter, right? St. Thomas. Well, it's one of the guys, all right? St. Paul, St. Jamal, I don't fucking know. But there's a guy that you come up to, and you're like, bro, can I get in? And he looks at a sheet of paper, and he's like, okay, well, let's see. Donated to Coney 2012. It's positive. Furry porn. That's a negative. And played Volpira. Not good. Alrighty. And then, okay, put hashtag free Hong Kong, boycott Blizzard in 2019. Yeah, that's good enough. All right, open the gates. Let's bring him on in. Bring him on in, guys. Let him get in here. And, yeah, that's basically how it works. And sometimes he just looks at the list, he's like, yeah, fuck you. And then he sends you down to Satan. Or, like, you go to purgatory or some shit, right? And so it's basically like the judge of if somebody goes to, like, a good... Actually, like, who was the guy... I'm trying to remember in Dante's Inferno. This is a better example, right? Because there's, like, the 9 circles of hell. And it's basically, like... Depending on the kind of person you were, you go to a different place in the Shadowlands. And that's what the Arbiter decides. Bond Swambi. Yeah, Virgil. Yeah, of course, Virgil.
Right? Whenever you die, your soul goes to the Shadowlands. And the way it's supposed to work is that your soul comes before the Arbiter.
Right.
And the Arbiter will, depending on your actions in life, send you to one of the primary realms of the Shadowlands. Now, that's our new zones: Bastion, Maldraxxus, Ardenweald, and Revendreth. And in those zones, we are going to meet older characters like Kel'Thuzad, like Uther, like Draka. And not AU Draka, like actual original Draka, you know, Thrall's mother. So that's all fairly interesting. Now, these zones, most of them are not framed as being evil places, right? So Ardenweald is, they say, a dark mirror to the Emerald Dream. And I've got a big speculation on that in a bit. Take Bastion. That's where, you know, people who are a bit more serving go to. Like, say, Uther the Lightbringer. They unshackle themselves from their burdens and prepare for a life of service with the Kyrians. Then you've got Maldraxxus, which is quite interesting because it really does look like an evil place, but Ian sort of described it more as, you know, sort of survival of the fittest, and that the realm of Maldraxxus really is the military might. It's what defends the Shadowlands, and it's where the Lich King actually called on a lot of his power from. And then there is Revendreth, which is, well, just a bit more of a horrible place. It's where people go to atone for things, for penance.
Assholes.
And that's where characters can kind of go penance, maybe atone for their sins, and then go to one of the other realms. So that's the way that it is supposed to work. And when a soul goes to one of those realms, the anima of that soul sort of goes to that realm as well. Now, you might be wondering, what is anima? Well, anima is basically your might as a soul. So a real mighty soul like Garrosh Hellscream or Varian Rin, they'll have a lot of anima. And the amount of anima you've got, it's got nothing to do with how good you are or how evil you are.
So the experience.
It's just how mighty of a soul you are.
How much experience
maybe a farmer who's led a more humble life will have less anima. So that's basically how it works. The souls go there, they get sorted into the realms of the Shadowlands, the realms then get their anima, and they all perform their function. However, that's not how it's working anymore. Things have broken because there is a 5th realm, our endgame only zone of the Maw. And the Maw is just a writhing, twisting, basically like a black hole for souls.
That's
and
for
what's
the
happening
assholes.
now is that souls are being sucked into the Maw, from where, you know, we don't really know what happens. And the Maw itself is even something that's a little bit sort of mythological to the people who are in the Shadowlands. And the Jailer, who is the character who seems to be in charge of the Maw expanding, well, Ian actually described the Jailer as really that the Kyrian would think of him as almost a boogeyman, like, you know, watch out or the Jailer will come and get you. So this Jailer character is another big, major character in this expansion. And he's also the explanation of why Sylvanas has got so very powerful in recent times. So, what does the Jailer do? We don't really know. He's almost certainly, or she, whatever, an extremely ancient character, but we just don't know anything
supposed to be
about who
before
they
the
are.
Titans.
I mean, the reason why I defaulted to he is because there was a thought that it was Muzala, and so that could be a thing. But again, it's hard to know right now, and no doubt this is going to be one of the things that Blizzard will unveil as the expansion goes on.
I think that'll
now,
make sense,
Sylvanas is not working for the Jailer. Sylvanas is working with the Jailer. Blizzard were very clear to make that be the case, so it doesn't...
You can never make her not an empowered female character, right? Working for somebody else, so of course not. You can never do that. Sylvanas is just all in it for herself. Yeah, she's very strong. She's a strong, independent, undead night elf. Okay? Or high elf, excuse me.
Seem like it's an Ashara and N'Zoth thing, right? They're in league with each other, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The Jailer clearly has a lot of power over in the Shadowlands, but Sylvanas obviously has a lot more power in, well, I guess the Mortal Lands, wherever we are. Now, the way that that worked is that Sylvanas entered a pact with him, and that seems to be the source of her new purple magic. And yes, you've seen purple magic in Warcraft before, but remember that in 825, Lorthamar remarked upon Sylvanas' magic, thinking that it was new. Now, what's basically happened is over the last few years, whenever people have died, they've went to the Maw, and that has fed it. It's made it grow larger, and as the Maw has grown larger, Sylvanas has become more and more powerful, and that means that throughout Legion, whenever people died, well, their souls actually didn't go to the Arbiter for judgment and to be sorted into the other realms of the Shadowlands. They were sucked into the Maw, and Blizzard were clear when they said souls who have died in the past few years. So I think that does mean it covers Legion content and Legion heroes. Now I think it's interesting.
Thank God we don't have to see those losers again. Holy shit, bro. Like, do you expect to fucking have to see, like, who's died in the most recent years? Like, Varian again? Fuck him, dude. Like, Varian's okay. Tyrion, oh yeah, Tyrion did die. I forgot about Tyrion. That's not good. Let's see, who else died that I really don't give a shit about? I don't know, I don't remember, because I don't give a shit about him.
Interesting about that is if you look at characters like Uther, Draka,
Ysera,
Kel'Thuzad that we're going to be meeting in the other, like in the main leveling zones of this expansion, I mean, they're all older characters. It seems like maybe if we're going to meet Varian or Sarfang in this expansion, it's going to be in the Maw. So, as the Maw has grown, Sylvanas has grown stronger. And there's almost, I mean, it almost seems to me like a little bit of a flip on the Arthas-Ner'zhul Lich King relationship. And there's obviously differences, how they're, you know, in league with each other, the way that the power dynamics are working. But basically, that's why Sylvanas was so very powerful. In Battle for Azeroth, as we killed each other, the souls and the anima of those souls went into the Maw, made it more powerful, powering her up. And that means that by the time she goes to the pinnacle of Icecrown, yeah, she is able to take down Bolvar. And I mean, it's not like that's just Sylvanas Windrunner herself, an elf with some arrows who's done that. No, that is Sylvanas sort of propped up by some sort of extremely fundamental, mythical, spooky force. Now, I'm not saying that's the ideal way for the plot to go, I'm just explaining the lore mechanics of how Sylvanas was able to do that in that cinematic. I know that's one thing that many people have had questions and criticisms about, and there you go, that is Blizzard's explanation of that. Now, the way that this story is going to work is that after defeating...
I think that's shit lore. Like, it really is shit lore. I mean, I think it's just genuine shit lore. I mean, like, regardless of, like... I get this is how it works, but I think that it's shit. Doesn't make sense. So it doesn't matter about, like, if it's shit. Like, it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. right? I don't like it. It's not like, let me think of the way to explain it. I'm trying to explain this and figure it out. I mean, like, let me see, like, if I can explain this. I guess the best way to look at it is this, right? Is that the player doesn't feel or see Sylvanas getting more powerful throughout the expansions. There's no way for the player to see that Sylvanas is more powerful. There's no empowering device that's on screen that shows Sylvanas as becoming more powerful. So because of that, it's like whenever Arthas picks up Frostmourne, we know Arthas is more powerful because he has Frostmourne. Whenever Bolvar picks up the Helm of Domination, you know that Bolvar is more powerful because he has the Helm of Domination. Whenever Gul'dan, turns into a Hulk, you know that it's because he's being empowered by Sargeras. You didn't even know this was happening at all, and Sylvanas is just randomly getting more powerful. It's awful writing. It's not satisfying for the viewer at all to see somebody come in there out of fucking nowhere and completely wreck somebody who's supposed to be a very powerful force in the game because of an off-screen plot device. It's garbage. It's just straight fucking garbage. I mean, come on. Regardless of if it makes sense or not, it's still garbage.
Bolvar. Sylvanas then, as we see in the in-game trailer, she then goes to the jailer. Now, what then happens is the Scourge run rampant because the Helm of Domination has been destroyed. So we, along with me, I would presume Bolvar, we go to Icecrown to try to stop this problem. However, in the process, we are sucked into the Shadowlands. How does that happen? We don't know, but it will be the pre-expansion event. Now, because of our connection to Azeroth,
I need another mage, by the way, for this run.
Us from being sucked into the void. However, many of Azeroth's heroes will actually be sucked into the void. And my read in this is that the more Heart of Azeroth focused characters who have that connection with her, they're going to be fine. But maybe Anduin Wrynn, I think he might get slurped into the void. Or not to the void, into the maw. And if Anduin does get slurped into the maw, maybe he'll meet Varian, and maybe that's sort of the plot line that they're going to go with there. But it very much seems like our characters, through our connection to Azeroth, we're able to survive that. We then go to the Arbiter, we go to Oribos, which is this sort of mythical, before time kind of city that is really the center of the Shadowlands. We'll then quest through the 4 different zones, and then we'll go to the maw. And I think when we go to the maw, that's really when a lot of the lore is going to kick off. Now, I think I feel
like they're probably going to make the maw a lot like, what do you call it? The maw is going to be a lot like Mechagon, I'm assuming, right? With a lot of like really kind of new ideas that they're using. And I feel like that's kind of what it's going to be like. Not like Mechagon, as in like, oh, you have like these resources and everything, but the fact that like Mechagon is very free form and they're using a lot of new ideas in Mechagon. And so I think that you're going to see that same level of creativity with the Maw too. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's kind of what I'm looking to expect. We need one more mage for ZF. If anybody else wants to come, any mage wants to come to ZF, 42 plus, 60 ideally, right? That'd be great. But any mage wants to come to ZF, just message me, and we'll try to get this started.
Your lore hints, they're probably going to be a little bit later on. I mean,
well, we got a $100 donation. We got to read this. Isn't the whole point that they technically can't have shown her getting stronger through the game, as that would have leaked towards her being connected to the Maw or the evil the whole time, and should have caused suspicion to her? I agree it's bad writing in the end. Well, no, because the player should be able to understand the different forces that are at work. I can do a parallel to this as like Lord of the Rings, for example. By the way, thank you very much for the $100 fucking dollars. Thank you very much. It's like in Lord of the Rings, we know that Gollum told the Nazgul and Sauron that Bilbo Baggins had the ring. And the reason for that is because we were shown that as the viewer. And I think that the viewer and the person who's consuming the narrative should not be fooled in any sort of a way to where they couldn't necessarily predict it from happening, if that makes sense. So because you're looking at it from more of like an omniscient perspective as the viewer consuming the story, I don't think that they should tell the story from the perspective of one place, because I don't feel like that's satisfying for people whenever things come out of nowhere, because that's not going to be it's not going to feel good. I think it's just simply not going to feel good. It's an RPG, not a movie. Well, yeah, but they're telling it basically. It's not about being a movie. It's about it being good storytelling. I think that you should be able to predict and see things happening on screen.
Something that is exciting from a lore perspective is that the 4 zones actually have a linear story. You can play them in any order on your alts, but your first time through, it's a linear story. And I think that's really, really quite good indeed. It means they could do just a lot more with pushing the actual expansions narrative forward through the questing. But through that, we'll probably learn a little bit more. We do know that the first raid is a 10-boss raid in Revendreth, so I'm not exactly sure how focused that raid is actually going to be on the more broad sort of lore topics here, like who is the Arbiter, who is the Jailer, but no doubt we're going to get a lot of different hints. And then as time goes on, we're going to learn more about the Arbiter and about the Jailer. Now, this is really what I want to talk about here. The Arbiter, the Jailer, and the Emerald Dream.
Okay.
I think I'm going to start with the Emerald Dream first, okay? So,
because they're like parallels of each other.
Ardenweald is a dark mirror of the Emerald Dream.
Those are the bad boys.
You've got the Shadowlands as like the sort of fundamental realm or plane, and then within the Shadowlands, you've got its constituent realms. So, what if it's the same and we have the Lifelands that contrast the Shadowlands, being life and death on our Cosmic Forces chart? Because, I mean, if you think about it, if Ardenweald is a dark mirror of the Emerald Dream, then it would sort of tell you that the Emerald Dream is, you know, just about as important as Ardenweald. I mean, Ardenweald is actually where Cenarius went when he originally was defeated. He then was basically sent back in the in the Legion expansion and things like that.
Of course,
that's kind of what's going on there, and that makes me think that much like how you've got these 4 or 5 zones for the new expansion, and that they are areas of the Shadowlands, and the Shadowlands are just an infinite realm. I think you probably are going to have a Lifelands that is an infinite realm, with say the Emerald Dream being one of the constituent realms. That very much would be cohesive with the lore that Ian actually presented in the overview panel for World of Warcraft Shadowlands. So I think that's quite interesting, especially because you've got a Titan aspect who is associated with life in ANR. You've got Ysera, the Dragon aspect, who are a Titan Pantheon member. Dragon aspect, of course, with Ysera, who is really focused with life. You've got Freya, the Titan Keeper of life. You don't have that for Death at all, right? Argus, I mean, he literally has a scythe. He was obviously the Death Titan. That was clearly Blizzard's plan. So why was Argus not hatched out of his egg? Why did the Pantheon leave Argus behind? Did they simply not discover him? What's going on there? Are the Pantheon a bit more afraid of death? Really, it's quite hard to tell there. It certainly, though, is the case that through the lore that they've expanded upon here, the Titans are just another group of people, right? They're just another race. They're an extremely fundamental one, yes, an extremely powerful one, yes, but they're, they woke up, they tried to do their thing to reality, to creation, but they don't seem to be the end-all, be-all like they maybe seem to have been way back in the day, in the earlier lore of World of Warcraft. So I think this is all in line with Blizzard casting.
I think that's kind of like, I don't know, like maybe they're going with like, how the Olympus gods, there are still like, what are the Titans that are like kind of not really above the gods, but they're like the progenitors of the gods of Olympus, like Kronos and shit. I think that's kind of the direction they're trying to go in. Like maybe not, but that's what it seems like. That's what it seems like. Is they're trying to create a new level of power in the game to expand things, if that makes sense. Their parents, well, yeah, I know Kronos is Zeus's father. I get that, but Hercules isn't even a god. He's a demigod. And anyway, we are still looking. By the way, one more mage for ZF. I want to say that we need one more mage. Because this guy, he got fucking DC'd or some shit. I just want to get one more guy so we can start this up and I can watch the video without fucking thinking about it, Okay, let's go. Fucking thighs. All right, let's just change the picture because people are freaking out about it. Are you competing in No Nut November? No.
In a bit more of a morally ambiguous light. And I think that means that as, our characters in the game, we're going to learn a lot more about the realms of death, what the Titans maybe have or have not done, and maybe some darker aspects of the Titans' history. And then I think we're probably going to have the Titans come back. I mean, they clearly set that up, right, with the seat of the Pantheon.
Yeah, of course.
And when that happens, I think we're probably going to have a stern talking to with Aman'Thul, and I've got to wonder what's then going to happen. And that really does bring us onto the characters of the Jailer and the Arbiter, and I suppose also a little bit of Bomb Samedi. So the Titans clearly never thought to tell us about any of this, even though we just defeated their brother, the Titan of Death. Little bit odd, don't you think? So if we think about the Arbiter, right? The Arbiter is obviously not a Titan. Could the Arbiter be a loon? I actually think that may be the case, because a loon, you see associations with a loon to, you know, to the light, and sort of a little bit to, you know, like an affinity with like the forest and how the night elf culture is worked out. And I've got to wonder, right, if a loon, you know, is a sort of a many aspect character, you know, a bit like how we see, you know, Elune the Mother, but also Elune the Night Warrior, and how that's something that Blizzard clearly set up with the end of BFA. Well, I've got to wonder if you have the Elune of the Shadowlands, the Elune of the Lifelands, and if they're sort of parts of a whole, and that Elune really is an extremely fundamental creature. So that much, I think, could be a very interesting area for speculation. And
I don't know, I feel like the mythology of this game it's kind of convoluted, in my opinion. Like, what is Elune? Are all the Titans the progenitors of the world? Now you have this other person that predates the Titans, the Void Lords. It's convoluted. And I feel like whenever they did, I'm thinking like whenever they did the Chronicle, like, yeah, like I didn't read like everything in the Chronicle. I've read a lot of parts of it, but I never sat down and actually read the entire thing myself. But it feels like for a lot of people, it's kind of created more questions than it's answered. Because even before, like, Blizzard would just kind of assume that it was being retconned. But now, like, I still don't understand why, like, breaking the Helm of Domination just opened up the Shadowlands. Like, I can kind of see why, but that seems kind of crazy to me.
It's one that Blizzard could explore using Tyrande. So
yeah,
I think that's something we're definitely
that's a good idea. They could use her.
Other than that, though, I mean, who is the Arbiter? Your guess is as good as mine. Right now, it's purposefully left
yeah,
being
that's
mysterious.
what I thought too.
All that we know is that, like, this is a character from, you know, before time was a concept, right? This is such a fundamental character to the universe, to the cycle of life and death, that really, no matter what the explanation of who the Arbiter is, it's going to be extremely important for the lore of World of Warcraft. Then next, we've got the Jailer. Who's the Jailer? I mean, I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Is it Muzala? I mean, it could be, right? We had the Il'gynoth line in patch 8.3. We've had him be described as, you know, the father of sleep, the hungering darkness. We've got all those lines that I speculated about in the past, which means that, yeah, you know, the Jailer could be Muzala. We don't know, though. At this stage,
I feel like the Jailer is the progenitor of death. Like, the Jailer is like, he was like the first undead. I feel like, yeah, he is the progenitor of all death. That's the only thing that would make sense to me. But it's like, if we, like, how do you fight something like that? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, we'll see.
It really could be anything. What is interesting, though, is Sylvanas is working with the Jailer. And I've got to wonder if the terms of that arrangement are going to change. I mean, maybe if Sylvanas will want to take the Jailer's position, something like that. It's kind of hard to tell. There's also, I think, a pretty interesting aspect here where,
26 months, man.
you know, Sylvanas, she went to that, like, sort of terrible dark oblivion whenever she originally died. Well, I mean, what if she went to the Jailer in, you know, after Icecrown?
Yeah.
That, I think, would be a pretty major bit of lore. Maybe that's where Arthas is floating around. And, I mean, Ian did say that Arthas is dead. Like, he literally did say that he's pretty much dead and gone. But I wonder...
Thank God. I don't want to see that story dredged up again. And I feel like that was kind of the logical conclusion that a lot of people came to whenever Sylvanas died, and then she came back, and, you know, all this other shit, right? Is that she met this person, and then it's been happening ever since then. Like, logically, that's what would make sense. And I feel like also the only concern I have with that is that it wasn't, whenever that originally happened, I don't think that they intended that, like, later on. Like, whenever they wrote that story, they didn't intend, okay, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years later, she's actually not seeing the abyss. It's actually this guy, and it's going to be this big thing. I don't know if they're writing it with that much in mind, because it feels to me like they're not.
If they would sort of bring a little bit of Arthas back through the Maw Zone. But basically, the fundamental point here is that the relationship between the Arbiter and the Jailer is going to be extremely important. I think what's actually going to happen is you're going to see more of a link between the Arbiter and the Jailer than you may have first thought, and that they will both be intrinsic sort of elements of the Shadowlands. It could be that, or it could be that with the Maw being described as this kind of black hole, maybe it is a sort of corruption that was introduced into the Shadowlands, and that it's something that's been growing, that is a major problem, and that we really do need to deal with, and it just happens to be the fact that Sylvanas is the one who brought us there. Now, as for Sylvanas, I mean, what is her goal? Seemingly, she wants to just slurp up all the souls. It's the stuff that she's talked about, you know, the world being a prison, her wanting to set us free. We're just going to have to wait and see what that actually means. I think that what she did in the cinematic is a means to an end, and that we don't quite know what that end is yet. And I've got to imagine Blizzard are not going to explain what her end is until they actually show us her end and try to shock and surprise us with it, because that's basically how they've written Sylvanas thus far, and I would expect that to continue. Then there's also a little bit on Bum Samedi. So we've had all the speculation about Bum Samedi's boss, who that might actually be, and well, could it be the Arbiter? Yeah, I think it actually could be. Could it be the Jailer? Maybe not. You see, Bum Samedi will have known that Sylvanas was actually working with the Jailer. What does Bum Samedi do right after Dazar Lore? He says to Talanji that he will free her from her people's pact, you know, the one that Rastakhan set up with him, if she just lops the head off Sylvanas and gives it to him. Now, I think that pretty clearly means that Bum Samedi and the Jailer are absolutely not friends. And if we are going to tie this more into the Troll Loa, and we're maybe just going to be exploring the Loa and the Wild Gods a little bit more through like zones like Ardenweald, well, then what if we do actually see that Bum Samedi's boss is the Arbiter, and that Bum Samedi is indeed just, you know, dealing with a really important part of the cycle of death. I mean, he does have his own dungeon. It's basically his own little pocket realm up there, so that'll be pretty cool to see. Then also, I guess there's the Drust stuff. I mean, the Drust are connected as well. And it'll be really interesting to see, like, the Gorak tool stuff. Will that actually come through in this expansion? And definitely, to all the people who said, hey, why aren't you talking about the Drust more in your speculation videos? Yeah, I was dumb, you're absolutely right, and I totally should have. But there you go, that is a sort of overview, speculation, my thoughts on really why things are happening, where the lore could be going, what Blizzard probably mean by all of this. I'd love to hear what your own speculations are, though, so please do let me know down below. Of course, you know, I'm going to pimp the hell out of these because I'm really happy with how they turned out. So if you want to check out the pins, you can check out the Patreon, and I mean, if they do well, we have very major plans for 2020 for making really, really cool stuff. So check that out. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think down below.
That's good.
And with that, I will see you next time.
Yeah, they said, that's the thing, is like, I feel like nobody knows who the Jailer is because they literally said that he's a new character. You see what I'm saying? Like, they actually just said that he's a new character.